Hello and welcome to Exercise for Everyone. This is Lesson 1, Ab Crunch. Lesson 1, Part 10. Using a resistance band to do crunches upright. This exercise is commonly done at the gym with the cable or the pulley system, but a resistance band works just as well. For this exercise, the anchor should be just above the height of your head and slightly behind you. Always make sure you anchor your band securely. Do not anchor it to something that could tear your band and make it rip. And last but not least, the further you are from your anchor, the more resistance there will be. An upright crunch can be a very challenging exercise to do correctly. It's tempting to pull from your arms, and it's also tempting to flex from your hips rather than flex from your spine. It's typical to do this motion from a kneeling position. However, you can also do it seated like I'm going to show here. I will also show a series seated with your legs extended straight out in front of you. I like this option the best as it promotes very good posture, flexibility of the lower back and hamstrings, and makes it much harder to flex from the hips. In this position, I will also show many arm variations. But know that you can use these arm angles in the kneeling position or seated on a bench as well. Seated on a bench. I'm sitting here on a playground bench. However, you can find places in the gym and sit on an exercise bench or in your home to do this as well. Seated on a bench with one leg crossed. Crossing one leg will require slightly more stability and put a little bit more pressure on your obliques. Seated on a bench with arms extended towards legs. By extending my arms, I have more pressure on my band, therefore making the resistance feel greater. Seated on bench with downwards arm press. Again, as my arms extend, the resistance band will stretch. This will require my abdominals to work harder because there will be more resistance at the end of the range of this crunch. Kneeling, hips extended. This is not as common a position to do this crunch in. However, if you have bad knees, putting your hips towards your heels might hurt. More control will also be required from the transverse abdominis. Kneeling with heels to hips. This is the most commonly done variation of this. You'll see people at the gym on the cable and pulley machines doing it this way. Seated with legs in front of you and knees partially bent. If switching to this seated variation causes pressure on your lower back or you have tight hamstrings, bend your knees. Seated with extended legs and back supported modification. Just as slightly bending your knees makes this a modification, so does allowing your lower back to stay supported by something behind you. Remember, we want this to be an abdominal flexion of the spine, not a hip flexion. Having support behind your lower back like this can help you learn how to flex the spine correctly. And of course, you can use almost all of the arm variations you will see in the videos ahead. Seated with extended legs. When we extend our legs out straight like this, there will be more pressure on our back. However, this becomes an obstacle for your abdominals to overcome, making it more challenging. Seated, legs extended, and one crossed. By crossing that one leg, it's slightly harder to stabilize, and we put a little bit more pressure on our obliques. Both legs crossed. Again, by crossing those legs, you'll have a little bit more challenge for your oblique muscles. Be sure you switch which leg is crossed in front of the other on set 2. Seated with your legs in a diamond position. Again, with our thighs externally rotated and abducted, we will have more pressure on our obliques. Seated with extended legs and chest press. Just like when we were doing an extension of the arms when seated on the bench, in this variation, as the band stretches, It creates more resistance, making it more challenging to crunch with the arms extended. Seated with legs extended and elbow extension. Just another great way to stretch out that band, giving your abdominals more resistance. Keep your arms parallel and the elbows in line with your shoulders. Seated with legs extended and chest fly. Remember, the crunch here comes first. Make sure that your arms stay in line with your chest and that you actually crunch, not just fold at the hips. Seated with extended legs and arms by your ears. Just like with other abdominal exercises where you keep your arms by your ears, it raises your center of gravity, making the pressure further away from the muscles you're contracting and therefore making it harder. Seated with legs extended and arm circles. Direction 1. In this Pilates Reformer inspired crunch, we're going to need more control over our core as our arms make a circle. Seated with legs extended and arm circles. Direction 2. Feel free to circle your arms in both directions. And for variety, you may alternate directions as well. Seated with legs extended and arm circles, one arm at a time. Although this exercise looks easy, it is very advanced. There is so much control and stability needed to keep the one arm still and still crunch your spine rather than flex your hips. And also, try not to rotate your spine. Thanks for watching! In Part 11, we'll look at ways to use a resistance band to add difficulty to a normal laying down crunch.